Making headlines and prompting conversations all day, our exclusive interview with President Obama. And now, for the very first time this hour, you can see the whole thing in its entirety right here. Jake Tapper, this is The Lead.
I can't wait, and the American people, more importantly, cannot wait.
The National Lead, The Lead's exclusive with President Obama, his first interview since the State of the Union. The Commander-in-Chief, very frank about using his pen as a sword against Congress. Also talking about compromise with Republicans on immigration, Afghanistan, the NSA, why his policies still lump marijuana in with cocaine and heroin. How nervous is he about a terrorist attack at the Sochi Olympics? And, of course, a few lighter moments, including...
I think it's going to come down to the last play.
Like the rest of America, the president will be in front of a TV on Sunday watching the Super Bowl, and perhaps the cagiest moment of our interview. I will try to pin down his call on who's going to Disneyland after the final play. And the sports lead, hey guys, why don't you go refill the bean dip this year? The ladies are too busy watching the Super Bowl. Women have become a huge part of the NFL audience, and they've got the Peyton Manning jerseys to prove it. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to The Lead. I'm Jake Tapper. We'll begin with the national lead. The country watched this week as President Obama laid out his agenda for the year in his State of the Union address and warned that if the perpetual gridlock in Congress continues, he will not hesitate to go around them wherever and whenever he can. But there was only so much detail the president could get into during an hour and 5-minute speech, and so he decided to sit down with us in Waukesha, Wisconsin, exclusively for his very first post-State of the Union interview, where he filled in some of the details of the grand plans he announced in his speech. But our conversation went much further than that, encompassing everything from his battles with the Republicans to his views on legalizing marijuana to whether his early idealism has been tarnished. The president is making good on his vow to go it alone through executive actions and executive orders. Just today, he met with CEOs from companies like Apple and Walmart. He got 300 of these companies to sign a pact to give more consideration and not discriminate against the long-term unemployed, despite gaps in their resumes. And then the president signed a memo directing the federal government to do the same. There are nearly 4 million of the long-term unemployed in the U.S. It is a big part of the unemployment problem, perhaps the biggest part. And when I sat down exclusively with President Obama, our conversation quickly turned to them. Thanks for doing this, Mr. President.
Great to be with you, Jake.
So, your big push in the State of the Union, and here is whatever you cannot accomplish with Congress, you will take executive action or issue executive orders. How much can you really accomplish doing that?
Well, first of all, my big push is making sure we're focused on opportunity, making sure that every single day, all of us in Washington are trying to think about ways that we can help folks get good jobs, make sure that they're trained for the good jobs that are out there, make sure that those jobs pay, make sure our kids are getting a great education. Those are the issues that the American people still very much are concerned about. And obviously, there's going to be more that we can do if Congress is able to break through some of the gridlock. And if we're able to, for example, pass immigration reform, that is going to add growth to our economy, reduce our deficits.
You don't seem confident that that's going to happen.
No, I actually think that we have a good chance of getting.
I don't mean immigration reform. I mean the jobs issue, though.
I think there are going to be some issues where it's going to be tough for them to move forward, and I am going to continue to reach out to them and say, here are my best ideas. I want to hear yours. But as I said at the State of the Union, I can't wait, and the American people, more importantly, cannot wait. We know that one of the biggest problems right now in the jobs market is the long-term unemployed.
Yeah, they're having trouble. People won't hire them because they've been unemployed so long.
Because they've been unemployed so long, folks are looking at that gap in their resume, and they're weeding them out before these folks even get a chance for an interview. So what we've done is to gather together 300 companies just to start with, including some of the top 50 companies in the country, companies like Walmart and Apple and Ford and others, to say, let's establish best practices. Do not screen people out of the hiring process just because they've been out of work for a long time. We just went through the worst recession since the Great Depression. And so I'll be convening a meeting where a number of these top companies will be coming in, agreeing to these best practices, and we'll have an opportunity to encourage more people to come in. All those things cumulatively are going to have an impact. Will we be able to have more of an impact if we can get Congress, for example, to pass a minimum wage law that applies to everybody as opposed to me just through executive order, making sure that folks who are contractors to the federal government have to pay a minimum wage? Absolutely. And that's why I'm going to keep on reaching out to them, but I'm not going to wait for them.
Your critics say this is diminished expectations, and I've been covering you for a long, long time, as you remember, 2005, 2006 in the Senate. I remember during the campaign when you talked about your presidency being a moment when the rise of the oceans would slow and the nation, the world, would heal. And now you're talking about pen and phone and executive orders and executive actions. Do you think you were naive back then, or have you recalibrated your expectations and your ambitions?
Well, part of it is we got a lot of that stuff done. We've got, in this country, a healthcare reform that has already signed up millions of people and make sure that everybody who's watching, anybody who already has insurance, will not be dropped because of a pre-existing condition. If they don't have health insurance, they can get it on healthcare.gov. We have made enormous strides on the education front, changing our student loan program so that millions more young people get student loans. And so part of what's happened is that checklist that I had when I came into office, we have passed a lot of that. And so in no way are my expectations diminished or my ambitions diminished. But what is obviously true is we've got divided government right now. The House Republicans in particular have had difficulty rallying around any agenda, much less mine. And in that kind of environment, what I don't want is the American people to think that the only way for us to make big change is through legislation. We've all got to work together to continue to provide opportunity for the next generation.
And let's talk about House Republicans because, and Senate Republicans, because there has been a large contingency of Republicans critical of your new approach. Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, who might run for president, calls this the imperial presidency. And in the House, there is this thing, as you know, called the STOP Act. They want to rein in what you're trying to do. How do you respond to that?
Well, I don't think that's very serious. The truth of the matter is that every president engages in executive actions. In fact, we've been very disciplined and sparing in terms of the executive actions that we've taken. We make sure that we're doing it within the authority that we have under statute, but I'm not going to make an apology for saying that if I can help middle-class families and folks who are working hard to try to get in the middle class do a little bit better, then I'm going to do it. And you know, I think it's a tough argument for the other side to make that not only are they willing to do not do anything, but they also want me not to do anything. In which case, I think the American people, whose right now estimation of Congress is already pretty low, might have an even lower opinion on it.
The STOP Act is not something you take seriously?
I'm not particularly worried about it.
Let's talk about areas where you might be able to make some progress.
Yeah.
I know that a pathway to citizenship in immigration reform is very important to you, and it's very important to Democrats and others. It's possible that you might be able to get an immigration reform bill on your desk that has legal status for the millions of undocumented workers who are in this country, but not citizenship. Would you veto that?
Well, you know, I'm not going to prejudge what gets to my desk.
Right, but how important is that principle?
Well, I think the principle that we don't want two classes of people in America is a principle that a lot of people agree with, not just me, and not just Democrats. But I am encouraged by what Speaker Boehner has said. Obviously, I was encouraged by the bipartisan bill that passed out of the Senate. I genuinely believe that Speaker Boehner and a number of House Republicans, folks like Paul Ryan, really do want to get a serious immigration reform bill done. If the Speaker proposes something that says right away folks aren't being deported, families aren't being separated, we're able to attract top young students to provide the skills or start businesses here, and then there's a regular process of citizenship, I'm not sure how wide the divide ends up being. That's why I don't want to prejudge it.
I just wonder if you see this at all in terms of especially the pathway to citizenship, in the way that you seemed to when you were passing healthcare reform and I was covering it, the public option. In other words, it would be great in your view if you could do it. It's not going to happen, and there might be some expectation setting you have to do, because having reported on this, I don't think House Republicans can pass anything that has a pathway to citizenship.
Well, here's the good news, though. Number one, there is a desire to get it done. And that, particularly in this Congress, is a huge piece of business, because they haven't gotten a lot done over the last couple of years out of the House Republican caucus. They've been willing to say what they're against, not so much what they're for. The fact that they're for something, I think, is progress. I do know that for a lot of families, the fear of deportation is one of the biggest concerns that they've got. And that's why we took executive actions, given my prosecutorial discretion, to make sure we're not deporting kids who grew up here and are Americans for all practical purposes. But we need to get that codified. And the question is there more that we can do in this legislation that gets both Democratic and Republican support, but solves these broader problems, including strengthening borders and making sure that we have a legal immigration system that works better than it currently does.
We have more from my interview with the president coming up, including his connection to Sergeant First Class Corey Remsburg, the wounded Army Ranger President Obama honored so memorably during his State of the Union speech. And then I got to the question on everyone's mind.
I'm going to give you a choice. You just have to pick one.
Yeah.
I'll give you two. Hillary versus Biden, or Broncos versus Seahawks. But you have to tell me, you have to pick one and give me the winner.